Here are the three things that we're going to walk away with, and then we'll get right into an explanatory part, and then we will bring our guests on who will actually brainstorm with me how they can create their interview answers. Okay, you're going to walk away with how to tell your SARI stories. We'll spend a lot of time on SARI stories, and a general framework for the tell me about yourself question. Let me back up for a second and give a bird's eye view, especially if there are people here who I only saw back in session 1, because this is session 4. My name is Senya. I'm based in Connecticut. I'm an executive coach. I do 2 things. I am a chief people officer to companies, startup companies, and I work with executives on their job search, specifically in where they're finding their next role, where the role may not even be published or available. For those reasons, I'm bringing that to you all. I taught this class 2 years ago to executives. Okay, let's get started.
Being recorded.
This meeting is being recorded. Where are we? We're in week 4. We're talking about interviewing. This is the first of part 2. So you may remember that I said there are 3 stages. The first stage is exploratory. What will I do in my next job? The second is action steps. So we're in the midst of action steps. How do I prep my resume? How do I prepare myself for the interview? That's what we're doing today. How do I connect and speak with people? And the last step is actually later stages of interviewing and closing the negotiation. As you may recall, about 20% of you are in stage 1 and about 20% of you are in stage 3. So most of you are in this active, we are taking steps stage. And that's where we are right now. One more reminder, which is these stages, they're not linear. It's not stage 1, 2, 3. You might go up the spiral and you're interviewing, and then you go back down and you're thinking about, is this the right niche? Should I change my niche? So there are going to be cycles, and this is okay. It's super okay. It's not predictable. You can control what you can control. And now I shall share with you the vital information of today's workbook. So with today's workbook, please go to this link, and Leah will post this in the comments. Please click on this link. Please get this link. Use this link. We will be doing everything from this link. So I will give you a moment to go there and copy it or print it out. You don't have to rush. I'm in a very methodical mode and mood with you all. And we will do step by step the 3 tools based on this workbook that is at this link. So with that, I can stop sharing. And I can tell you all that I'm glad you're here. We're going to start with the first tool. So open up the link and go to, I can share this for a moment. You're going to open up the link, how to interview superbly well. And we're going to talk about what are some of the most common questions. The reason I want you to see what some of the most common questions are because I want you to know the context in which we'll be practicing the answers that we're practicing today, which is the crux. It's the meat of what we're doing. There are basically 2 big categories of most common questions. Behavioral questions, which you're familiar with. That's things like, tell me about a challenging time or challenging experience you had that you still made go well. Tell me about a time that you were under pressure in which you met that challenge and delivered on time or even ahead of time. So those are behavioral questions. What I'd like to suggest to you today is almost, so take this with a grain of salt, almost no matter the behavioral question that you're asked, you can provide your specific SARI story. I'll get into what SARI means, but you can, if you have your SARI stories, and you'll probably have 3 to 5, today you will have 1 after walking out of here. If you have your SARI stories, they can be used for many different behavioral questions. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, I'll keep jumping forward. So here are some of the most common questions in interviews. First of all, there's going to be tell me about yourself, and we're covering that today. Another are these behavioral questions, and feel free to use this link. It's a good list of questions from the website, Indeed. These are very, very expected. Now, what I would like you to know is that a lot of companies tend to use questions from a book called Who. The book is by Jeffrey Smart and a co-author. And there's a summary here, a summary on Medium. So you can also see this is a book that instructs hiring managers what are the best questions to ask to get in depth about employees. So now you, as the job candidate, know what questions they will very likely be asking you, whether it's these or similar to these. So these questions are, there's a screening interview set of questions, which is, what would you like to be doing in 5 years? What are you really good at? What do you not really love to do so much? And then who were your last bosses and how would they rate your performance and why? That's a screening interview. You would get that much less. But what I would like you to know is you are likely to get questions like this. What were you hired to do in this role? What accomplishments are you most proud of? What were some low points during this job? Who were the people you worked with and why did you leave that job? So just things for you to think about that you'll be ready to answer. I really put this up here so that you know what's coming. And now what I'd like to practice with you all is, how do we answer questions like this? So to do that, let me introduce to you the SARI method. Now I know over 80% of you have seen this, and for those on the recording, I'll put a link as well, and there's a link here. So I will do this very, very briefly, but I'll describe what the SARI method is. And then we're going to welcome in Ahava first, and then 2 other guests so that we can play around. So what is the SARI method? The SARI method, Anxious Toast has asked, what is the difference between STAR and SARI? It is almost exactly the same. I'll tell you what SARI is in a second. STAR is situation, task, action, result. SARI is, what is the situation? S, A, what are the actions I took? R, what is the result this delivered? And I is an interesting thing, which may or may not exist in your story. That's about and effectively all I really want to tell you about these. I'll share a couple of other details and then we'll play. When you're developing a story, the reason you want to start with the situation is you want to set up what was bad before you came in. So when you're writing your bullet points on your resume, you're probably writing, here's the action I took and here's the result. And it's a 20% increase in revenue and it's a 5% decrease in expenses. But when you're telling a story, you want the interviewer to be able to go home to their spouse and say, oh my gosh, this was a really interesting setup. This person walked into a terrible situation. Here's what they did and here are the results they got. So if you ever find yourself starting to say, oh yes, a challenging situation, I took these actions and this was a result, pause, just sort of, in my family, we play chess, and an expression in chess is sit on your hands. So literally when I was a kid and played in chess tournaments, my dad would give me the advice, sit on your hands so that you don't accidentally touch a piece. So metaphorically, sit on your hands before you're answering the question and think, wait, hold on, I have to set it up. I have to say what the situation is. So you set it up with, here are all the bad things before I started. Here are the actions I took. This is the result I got. The only other thing I'll say is we need to get to the SARI story, not through vague thinking of what it is, but through actually thinking of how you impacted the company. And so with this, I'm going to invite a guest. Ahava, may I please spotlight you? Excellent. We are now both spotlighted. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here. So Ahava and I had a chance to speak yesterday, and we will speak with you all. I will speak with her today as if we hadn't spoken yesterday. So all completely from scratch. Ahava, could you tell us what is the role that you're going for so that when we talk about your SARI stories, all of us have that in mind?
Sure. So my field is social impact, working in businesses that impact the world for the good, and have that quadruple bottom line, not only for how much money you take in, but also how much you help the world. And I am applying for CEO positions. And the big transition for me is I'm going from being a CEO of a small company, basically a team of about 12, to probably something within the close to 100 range. So that's a big jump.
Excellent. Very, very clear. So the role that we're considering is it's the CEO of about 100-person social impact organization.
Right. Organization or business. So it'll be either a non-for-profit or a business. Yeah.
Wonderful. So everyone, just keep in mind that this is the goal, and then see how the story develops to show Ahava's expertise towards that goal. All right, let's play. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, think of results. So when you think back over your career, what is an example of a result that you achieved for an organization that you worked for, where the result is going to be either that you increased profit or that you improved productivity or effectiveness? And increasing profit is either you increased revenue or you decreased expenses. And of course, improving productivity or effectiveness is that you created some procedure that was better. What is an example of one of those when you think back over your career, especially the past, let's say 5 to 7 years, where it's the biggest kind of example of a result in this way?
Right. So I'm very proud of in my last position, I took an amazing technology that was born out of a university in Illinois in the Midwest that was designed to impact off-grid small communities all over the world, but wasn't known to anyone. And I brought them to extreme visibility amongst multinational companies and corporations and multilateral ones, and increased revenue by 200%.
So I think what I am hearing you say is the organization had some revenue, and by the time of you were working, you had done what you were doing, it increased by 200%. So literally the revenue tripled.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so that's huge. So first of all, just in hearing your story, that's an excellent SARI story. That's going to be excellent because what you're demonstrating to be the CEO of about 100-person social impact business, you're saying, hey, I can deliver the goods. I can increase revenue. I can triple revenue in my time with the company. Awesome. So basically what I'm saying as an example to everyone else is we have a really strong start with the results section. Now, tell me, please, what were the problems? What were the challenges? What was not working before you stepped into this situation?
So the team was completely tech-based. Their strength was in building the technology, and their location was in the Midwest without any real relationships in order to catapult that technology into both global visibility and global use. And they didn't know how to do that. So when they originally hired me on, they hired me as the director of partnerships in order to do just that, in taking a technology that was siloed, but needed to go out into the world, to go out into the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is the situation was, this was a team. They were very strong, technically very strong. I wasn't sure technically or technologically, but they were strong on the
Both of those,
side.
right?
They were strong on the engineering side, and they did not have the expertise or the knowledge to bring in revenue, which is what you ended up doing.
Correct. Or application, right? They were people, it was a company with a great vision and had no idea how to implement that vision.
Okay, so execution was a problem as well.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I imagine then that it's possible that you might have a different SARI story in which you helped with the execution angle also. We don't have to get into that now, but given what you're saying, there were a few situations going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know the result. We know that there was a problem in that the team was very technical, but did not know how to take this, in a sense, to market. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great. When you stepped in, what were the actions you took? And before you start, and just for everybody, I want to say, sometimes leaders, so Ahava was the CEO of this company. Sometimes leaders, they will say, well, what we did as a business, what we did as a company, this is not the time to be we like that. You should do that when you're the CEO, but when you are in an interview for your next role, it's really about, what did I do? What were the actions I took? I led, I spearheaded, I gathered people, I did a listening tour, whatever it was, but it's what you did. So I'm putting that to Ahava right now, because a lot of people, when they are people managers, they want to say we did, but it's really, what did you do? So the situation was, technical team did not know how to grow the business. What were the actions you took?
So the first thing I did, coming from so many decades of partnership, I knew that any sort of execution and partnership revenue would come from building relationships. So I established a set of meetings throughout DC and New York, keeping it national, so that they could bring their technology, meet the people who would then bring it to the field. So I set up meetings with the United Nations, the World Bank, the Clinton Foundation, USAID, which is part of the US government that helps overseas. And we brought the actual technology and we had face-to-face meetings. And then we discussed together with the potentially partnering organizations, how do we work together? And the great synergy that happened there was you had the implementing organizer, you had the tech guy, and then my role really was to make sure that the communication became clear and strong and resulted in how do we partner in a very practical way. So we left each meeting with a set of follow-ups as to how to make sure that the technology was practically brought to the ground within a year's time.
Very clear. So these meetings were not going to happen without you. You brought them to sort of an audience. So some of those are great brand names to use in an interview. So the World Bank, the UN, the Clinton Foundation, just really great names. So can you summarize, like if we're just talking about the actions you took, what are 2 or 3 actions that you took? I understood the story. If we were to just say, here are the 2 or 3 that I took.
Sure. The actions that I did were set up meetings, face-to-face meetings. From then, we established partnership, either memos of understanding or actually grant applications that then brought in revenue and execution plans, which we then fulfilled. And the company is still ongoing, has ongoing partnership scaling with those organizations.
And Ahava, how did it get from meetings and discussions of partnerships? How did it get to tripling revenue? What was the motion there?
Right. So these are organizations that have either multi-million or $billion of, hundreds of $1 million in grants for exactly these reasons, but they're not given to any organization. They're based on relationships and trust. And so after those meetings, what I did is I filled out the grants and I cultivated those relationships. And then we succeeded in getting grants of $750,000.
So it sounds like they were possibly like smaller projects that led to bigger projects.
Right.
Okay, very clear. So may I challenge you?
Please.
Okay. It gave me a really almost like a how-to, like if we went to a how-to website, a how-to of what you did. I set up meetings, we discussed partnerships, I went there. Now I would like you to step back and put on, again, your CEO hat. And instead of saying something like set up meetings, which is a little more at the tactical level, can you describe your actions at a more strategic level? Same actions leading to the same results. How would you describe them at a more moving the organization towards this direction? So not as granular as setting up meetings. So could you give me 2 bullet points of actions? Take your time.
I ensured relationships were built at the highest level in our company with the organizations that they needed to be partnering with in order to ensure that the product went to market where it needed to go and got the revenue in order to start to have that occur.
Yeah, so for me, you have it in terms of, as a listener, you ensure that these relationships were built at the highest level. You have already told me that you brought those relationships because you had them. And now you're saying, and that led to the revenue. So I get it. To close this off with a bow, would you please give me your situation, your action, and your result, spending 2 sentences each on situation, then action, then result, in that order now?
So the situation was, when I arrived, it was a siloed technology that had the potential of impacting the world for the better, but didn't have any way or any know-how how to bring it into the world. What I did is that I took the leadership of our company and brought it to the leadership amongst partnering organizations that could then implement and fund the execution of the technology where it needed to go throughout in communities that needed it. And the result was increasing revenue by 200%. And now that technology is throughout various continents and amongst communities that need it.
Thank you so much. So stay here for a moment. For every one of us who's listening, what did Ahava just do that really resonated with you? So if you had been listening to this, what resonated with you? So please drop it into the comments and I'll read it out without reading your name. I'll just read out the comment. What did she do that resonated with you? And I'll start as you're typing some things in. You used the term situation, action, result. I could follow your story completely. It was super clear to me. And it's fine to use those. Those are very conversational, even though they are the framework, they're so conversational. Hear what people are saying. They could hear your relationship building in it. They could hear the clear communication of the actions and the results. Crisp and clear, so lots of crisp and clear. Oh, I like this also, that you impacted high levels of the organization. Clear story with critical results, a lot of clarity. Oh, somebody really liked that it flowed easily and comfortably. This was a clear picture you got out of the weeds. A positive description of the problem areas. That's a wonderful thought, because you could come across as, oh, I don't like things and this was the bad, but this was actually a positive description. Yes, these people just didn't have this expertise. They were amazing. They were brilliant technologists, but they didn't have this partnership expertise. Going from tactical to strategic, and you could see those actions within the org. Thank you, everyone. Ahava, thank you so much. I love it. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. One question on my end is, you helped pinpoint the right words, and there seems to be a vocabulary that is of, I don't want to say buzzwords, but they sound a lot better, like execution, go to market, certain things that it's not necessarily in a normal discourse, but you're right, it's so important to have those buzzwords in the interview. So how do I know what those buzzwords are?
People, can you please help me by saying in the comments, who used the buzzwords? Was it me or was it Ahava? Like, just, Ahava or Senya. I'd like a little bit so she can see it herself. I asked you, how would you describe it at a strategic level? You used the words. You said to, I think it was to execute it was something like execute the implementation of relationships or execute relationships. That I didn't use those. You used them.
Okay. Thank you for that.
For sure you did. And I couldn't, because I don't know your field so well. Right. So it really was you. But I think what you're asking is a really great question for others here. You will not always work with a coach on this, but you can work with your friend. You can work with your friend, you can work with your significant other, you can work with someone in your family, a sibling, and you can say, hey, I want to get this clear. I want to walk away with having 2 sentences for situation, 2 sentences for action, 2 sentences for result. Let me start with result. Is this result impactful enough? Is it clear? I'm using millions of dollars. I'm using percentages. Is it clear to you? And it's even better if that person is not in your field. So what you asked is really great, because it takes iterations. And that's actually why I'm so glad that the 3 of you are here. It's not, if I needed to do one, my first version would be so much worse than if somebody were asking me these same questions.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to, if people are clapping for you, I'm seeing that people are clapping. Thank you, folks. I'm going to remove Ahava and Carlos. Are you ready to jump in?
Yeah, ready and willing. Thanks for having me.
And willing to. Excellent. So let me grab both of us here. Okay. Everybody, please welcome Carlos. This is Carlos. Carlos, would you please, so people are waving at you, just so you know, would you please share with me, what is the role that you want to go into next? What's your next play?
So my next role is going to be pretty similar to the role that I just came out of, and it was heading up talent acquisition. I actually was heading up talent acquisition and culture. So I'm looking for that combination, depending on the size of the organization. So it's building out teams, ideally for organizations that are rapidly trying to, scale, either in that growth early startup stage, or in that scale up stage, which is what I came from.
Circling back to a few things that you all may know from our previous sessions, some of what Carlos just gave me is what we talked about with your GPS for your role. So that would be your role, the industry, and the location. And so some of the things that Carlos said are, here's the role, I want to be a head of talent or head of talent and culture. And then he said, what kind of company? So these companies that are scaling, that are high growth companies. Is that accurate? Great.
Yeah.
So you're giving me, by saying that to me, I also see that it's crystallized in your head, which is great because you know exactly what to go for. Brilliant. Carlos, if we think to the R, the result, and you think about, and you're I'm in the people field as well, the HR people field, and so it's a little bit of a tricky situation, the question I'm about to ask you, because you're in talent acquisition. If you think of a result for the business or for the company, where the result is increasing profit or improving productivity, where increasing profit is increasing revenue or decreasing expenses, and improving productivity or effectiveness is creating some sort of process or something that makes it easier, more effective for the company. When you think of those, what's the result that you can point to that you're especially proud of?
So one, I guess, without kind of giving you the whole situation.
Yep. Go ahead and start just with the result. Yep. Go ahead.
Within one of the startups that I had joined, within the first year, I was able to double their head count from 100 to 200. And in the subsequent second year, after being promoted to heading up the overall talent team, I built out a team, taught them my strategy, and we doubled the company again, which led to the release of an undeveloped product and previously developed product within a project timeline.
Okay, so let me play back to you if I got it. First of all, you doubled from which is the goal of a head of talent acquisition. I'm just sharing that with people who aren't in the HR and in the people world like you and I are. So you doubled from 100 to 200, the number of employees, and then you doubled again from 200 to 400 the following year.
Yep.
Other thing that I'm hearing you say is it was a specialized expertise that you needed to bring on. So it's not just, hey, people apply and we got it. Am I accurate in what you're describing?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is, I guess it's the other part of the result I hear is that it was bringing on core technologies that the company didn't have previously, and
Great.
Very niche and from global talent.
Great. So that's two results. So we actually already have your two result sentences, the 100 to 200, 200 to 400 over 2 years. And that the talent that you brought on, it's not, hey, I need a head of sales, I need a head of engineering. It is actually really specialized technology, if I'm following you right. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to before you joined the company. So in those dark times before Carlos came and brought all the good news and the good cheer, what was happening at the company that wasn't working?
I don't think it was exactly dark times, but nonetheless, the organization that I had joined was an unknown startup. They had just released a consumer electronics product, interesting product that had its fans following, but they were doing a pivot. And the product that they were developing, or that they wanted to develop, and they had a very rudimentary prototype at the time that I joined, based on a very small core team. The technology was completely different than what they had originally developed. So they did not have the internal expertise, and the expertise was extremely niche. It's not like every company has it. It's really hard to find and not well developed. So they needed to grow very quickly and to take advantage of a market condition. And they needed to gain this expertise to an unknown company. And here's the kicker, do it in secrecy. So they couldn't tell. I couldn't tell anybody what we were working on because we wanted to stay completely below the radar until we were ready to release our product.
But how can you do that? You're putting out job descriptions. They have to have keywords in it. How can you keep it? How is that possible?
Oh yeah. And so that was it. Like from just the basic technology perspective, you could put in like some of the key broader words. In this case, the company was building a all-day wearable prescription, smart glasses. So you could use optics and some of the basic optic technologies, like you could use some of those buzzwords, and it might give somebody a sense of maybe they're doing this, maybe they're doing that, but you'd really have to stretch to connect the dots. Obviously, we couldn't say smart glasses or heads-up display or any of that stuff.
Wow.
It was just optics was the kind of the high level of what could be discussed, and
Awesome.
everything else was just building intrigue.
So building intrigue, I like that. So I actually went deeper than we would for this, but because of what you're describing, and I think that for me, that was actually really clear when you went to, so in a sense with Ahava, I had asked her, can you go higher level? But with you, that detailed level, that granular level, okay, I could say optics, but I can't say smart glasses, or I can't say wearable. That really actually gives me a sense of, this is a challenge. Like he had a challenge. Okay, I get the situation. Company pivoted, it needed a whole entire new team. Totally understood. What were the actions you took?
So the first one is actually around that building intrigue. And you pointed it out. How do you recruit for a technology and you can't tell them what you're exactly recruiting for? How do you attract, those people, especially when all they see is what the original company product was? So the first part was really about building that story. And in recruitment, it's always about building a story. Like, why would somebody actually want to make that move? So it was building the story around what would the product do for that person? How could they enhance their lives with that product, and building the story around that and using some of the keywords in, the optics area that would attract somebody with the technology, and just give them enough so that they would be intrigued. And want to solve that mystery, which they wouldn't learn until their first day of employment. But building that story was the first part. The second part, or actually it's all in tandem, but the second piece is, where are these people and their niche? So finding out the research institutes, the kind of parallel, we'll call competitive technologies, and going global. And then using, at the time, the global talent stream to bring in the immigrants, as we did from, Europe, and primarily Europe, but from other parts of the world, to our office, which was in Waterloo and San Francisco. And then training the teams, the interview teams, so that they could get up to speed, and putting in the processes and procedures. This is all part of the, the strategic plan to accelerate our hiring process.
But what about getting so many of this experts? So now you need these experts. They've never had these experts, but you need to get a lot. How do you get so many?
Yeah, that is the key. So in the first year, that was just a lot of legwork. In the second year, as I was building up the team further for our next goal, I was about building out the talent acquisition team, training them on my strategy, and then getting out to build out our manufacturing on top of our engineering, as well as R&D, and our go-to-market team.
But still, I just wonder, if it's such a narrow field, how can you get so many of them? Like so you've trained your managers, but how can you actually get them to come to your company? So many of them.
Yeah, I'd love to say that there's like a secret sauce to this. It really involved building those relationships within the research institutes.
Great.
There was
No, that's it actually, right? Because that also characterizes, I'm sorry to interrupt, that also characterizes you to me as a relationship builder.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was about building that relationship, going out to all those places where these individuals live, being able to present the story, and making sure that they would know about the company. So it's no longer an unknown entity. And then you start to kind of, rather than having to reach out to everyone, you start getting reach outs, based on that story being amplified, through the leaders within those organizations, or actually going out, to visit with those research institutes, those industrial affiliate, programs of the key research centers.
Very clear.
All of that.
Okay, so you all know what's coming next. Now I'm going to ask Carlos to summarize in 2 sentences the situation, 2 sentences for action and 2 sentences for result. I just want to point out something that Carlos is doing that's really, really great. He's told us he's going for a head of talent role. Head of anything needs to be fairly strategic, especially as a company grows. And he's also using terms here that imply that. So he's saying, I needed to put together a strategic plan. I trained the managers. I figured out the relationships with these research institutes. So he's not talking about, I called this person, I did this. And I'm mentioning that because he's coming in as a head of talent. So he is demonstrating my sphere. You want me because of the strategic sphere. So you're already doing that. I want to call it out. Okay, you ready for the 222?
Yeah, I'll try and abbreviate as much as possible.
Okay, so let me actually prompt you. Carlos, what is a difficult situation that you faced at a company in which you brought really good results?
Okay. I joined an early stage startup when they were an unknown entity and they were pivoting from their original product to something completely different, a completely different set of intellectual properties that they were trying to build up. Take them from the rudimentary prototype that they had developed to building out their expert teams so that they could release their product within a very short timeline and do so completely under the radar.
The actions I took.
There we go. So the actions I took was, first of all, building out a strategic plan, which included, or it started with, building out a story that once we actually were able to find and connect with the people that had the IP that we were looking for, we could tell them a compelling story that didn't divulge what we were trying to build, but built enough mystery, enough intrigue that they would want to actually join the organization. Then I built out the overall network of where are the research centers, where are the parallel competitive technologies, making those connections, selling the story, making the company a known entity so we could amplify the message and start to get volume back from reach outs from these individuals. Built out the processes and procedures and the training of the interview teams so that we could accelerate that growth.
May I ask, would you please tell me the 2 or 3 actions? Because I meet other people and I want to remember what are the 2 or 3 main things that Carlos did. So I'm actually asking you to repeat the actions one more time.
Boy, it's really hard to narrow this down. Okay, let me see. So building out a strategy that included the intriguing story that didn't divulge the company technology, but created enough mystery to want people to join the organization. And then finding out where these individuals are and then building out that network, those relationships, so that we could attract those individuals to us.
And the result, please keep going. The result was?
Sure. The result was within the first year, doubled the team from 100 to 200. And then built out the overall talent acquisition team as I was promoted to head that up. Which then saw a doubling again from 200 to 400 and the release of our product within the project timeline.
You have the job. I mean, if I could, really, people, please tell Carlos what resonated for you. So if you were on the other side of this and you had been interviewing him, what do you take away? What resonates for you? But one person saying it linked the result of your actions, the people, to the results of your company, the product. And this person also really liked building intrigue. Ahava and I were on a call with Carlos yesterday. We liked referring to Carlos as the mystery man. The active voice that you're using in the description of your actions. One person was asking whether you practiced the summary before. We did a short practice yesterday, right? But you went much deeper this time, I think.
Yeah, it's a story that I've tried to abbreviate. It's hard. There's just so many moving pieces to it. So not huge practice.
one person saying it's great to hear a recruiter's perspective because it helps all of us to understand the mission behind the role better, that this is what you're doing, because everybody here is in some process or will be speaking to recruiters at some point. Start by building a story. Approachable confidence. Wow, what a great term. Approachable confidence.
Thank you.
Succinct, clear, concise. It was smooth, authentic storyteller, great energy. When you really thought about the two actions, you were able to simplify multiple actions into one larger strategy. I totally agree with you, completely agree. The importance of a good story, but short good story. You had a good plan and you and you executed it well. Huge difference when you narrowed it to two actions. Okay, wonderful. What's the time length for the SARI story? Great question. I would say the best is 2, 2, 2. So 2 sentences on the situation, because you need to set up the situation. 2 sentences or 3 if you have 3 specific actions, and feel free to roadmap that. The 3 main actions I took were, that's what I mean by roadmap, like set out, I'm going to talk about 1, 2, and 3, and then say a little more on each of those, and then 1 or 2 sentences on results. Does that help? So I would say that's probably about 2 minutes. You kept it to skills a senior leader would need, and you did great in balancing high-level tasks. I totally agree. Carlos, thank you so much, so very much. Thank you.
That was fun. Thanks. It's always
awesome. That was really fun on
practice
my
that.
side too. Thank you. I am going to unspotlight Carlos for a moment. And in our remaining 13 minutes together, I would like to ask you to play, all of us to play. So here's how we're going to play. Oh, somebody else, please, Carlos, read this one. Having built a startup as the first employee, this was, let me just see. Oh, tips to keep it succinct and concise. How about 2, 2, 2? Is that a helpful direction or helpful tip? Okay. We want to hear what you all are doing as a result. So don't share any private information about your company, but tell us about millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that you increased revenue, that you decreased. What I'm going to ask you to do in a moment is to type into the chat, what is a result that you're proud of? Try to make it in the past about 5 to 7 years. And try to make it a big one that either increases profit or improves productivity. Increasing profit is increasing revenue or decreasing expenses, and of course, improving productivity. Why? I'd just like you to try it. I want you to try it here. So tell us, take a moment and tell us a result that you're proud of, that you're excited about, that for the company either increased profit or improved productivity. So go ahead and take a few moments. I'll just be silent here and go ahead and do that for a moment. Somebody just typed in increased gross margin by reducing cost. Tell me more. Reducing cost by what? By millions, by a percentage. Increased gross margin by what percentage? And you don't have to share it here, but what I'm saying, when you do it, use as many specifics as you possibly can. Another person is saying optimized operations and strategically cut costs 50% with a specific number year over year by hiring, onboarding, and training an offshore team of 8 data analysts. Reduce data collection and analysis time by 50% from 60 days to 30 days. People love seeing that. This is wonderful. Grew annual consulting revenues by over 40%. You guys are amazing. You guys are amazing. Delivered 4.7 times more on the bottom line. Launched a specific brand, including brand positioning, ultimately delivering 40 million in annual sales. I want to bring up for you what's really great about that. So this person is mentioning the lifetime value of their product. So some of you are in product marketing, some are in product management. If you can point to something that you were involved with that over a lifetime had a large value, so lots of income for the company, lots of revenue, please bring that up because you were involved in something that then turned into something big. Let's see, led a large cross-functional team to identify 2 to 3 products with an estimated incremental revenue of 150 million over 5 years. Awesome. Yes, you want to share those as the results. Increase the number of researchers in practice by 200%. I think I skipped something. Let's see. Yes, implementation of a new program in 3 months. I'll just read off 2 more. Wow, this is a really cool one. Found an inaccuracy in an export business process, created a task force team, and increased free cash flow by 1.8 million for the firm. Super, found an inaccuracy and it led to that. Created cross-departmental strategies for a multi-billion-dollar loan portfolio. Thank you, you're all on top of it. How does this feel? How does this SARI story method feel? So let me know how it feels for you to be hearing Ahava's and Carlos's story? You don't always have dollars or millions of dollars to attribute to your result. You may have percentages, you may have decreased downtime. That may be another story that we end up sharing a little bit later, but you may have something different that you have. How does this feel? Really, I'd love to know, how does this feel? So hearing a SARI story, how does it feel? Does it feel genuine, authentic? Does it feel awkward? Does it feel rehearsed? How does it feel? I really want to know. I really want to know if there are things that we should tweak. It's very interactive with the listener. You're saying these SARI stories. It is, because you're constantly watching the person. So you said the situation. Are they interested? Should you give them the actions? It is hard to quantify your successes. We are all going to be struggling with that. And ask your friends, ask people that you've worked with. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm telling you up front, that's true. Okay, let's do two more things. We have time, two more things. These stories are a good idea. I knew nothing about them. Great, welcome to SARI Stories, great. There is more information in the handout. There's a link to an article that a lot of people who came here have already pre-read. Interesting thing. Someone asked, what is an example of an interesting thing? So let me give you some general examples, and then I'm actually going to ask Ahava for a short example of an interesting thing related to her story, and Carlos for an interesting thing. So I'm going to scroll down in the workbook to page 6. I actually didn't put it there. What's an interesting thing? An interesting thing, let's say you got some results for your department. An interesting thing is, oh, by the way, sales was so interested in my result that the sales department adopted this process and they also got a good result. Or I got a good result. Oh, by the way, this opened an entirely new market for the company. So that wasn't the result. The result was an improvement of something, but it opened. There was a curiosity that led to something else. So if it's not related, but it kind of shows, hey, there are downstream effects to the actions that Senya is taking. She told us this story, but look, oh, an interesting thing that came of it. So let me put, Ahava, are you up for coming back on and giving an interesting thing? So we all remember Ahava's story, and what is an interesting aspect?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. What I found so fun and interesting that came out of this process of going from a silo technology in the Midwest to working on the ground is, over time as we grew, I ended up hiring a director of Africa and establishing an office in Africa and finding a director of it. Well, through these relationships with the multilaterals, oftentimes they want to see diversity in ownership. And so over time, what happened was the grantors asked that director of the African office to become a shareholder, an equity owner in the company itself. And so it diversified the growth, and the building out relationships also ended up diversifying who owns the company and really diversifying at a base level the kind of thought process that will happen in the company from now on. And I celebrate that decision and the encouragement by the partnering organizations, and it's fun to see.
What a cool, totally, I would say, like taking a big angle, different direction. So you've told us about how you develop partnerships and grew revenue. Oh, by the way, one of my key people that I brought on, now he's an equity holder in this and that organization. And it's a benefit to both the other organizations. That I thank you. Very, very cool. And it's
that authentically is something that I celebrate. It doesn't only sound good, it actually is.
It's so cool.
Like a wow that happened at such a base level, because it went from, this amazing technology that's supposed to impact the world, but has a very monolithic group of thought leaders at the base, to now being a diverse group that solves things together with totally different mindsets and from totally different cultures. And yeah, super cool.
Thank you. Thank you. It really is. Thank you. Okay, we are going to bring Carlos. Carlos, would you be willing to add something interesting? So we got the result, which is you doubled the team and doubled the team. You also brought on engineers that made the product come out on time. What's an interesting byproduct of all that?
So there's a couple that I think are most notable, and one that's just kind of, oh, that's cool. Well, the one major one is that, ultimately the success of the company in releasing the product, and certainly this was smart glasses, all day wearable prescription smart glasses, was attractive enough that ultimately the company was acquired by Google and folded into their augmented reality team. So
that wins, right? Like you don't even need another interesting point.
Yeah.
That's a great, and you are the person who's brought on all of those engineers. Yeah.
So I mean, it is hugely rewarding. The other really cool piece about all of that is I'm still in contact with a lot of these team members. Be them still with Google or not, and the constant underlying comment was that this was such an amazing culture within the company and team members that they worked with, that they haven't seen replicated anywhere else. And that to me is like the biggest praise ever. It's not just putting bums in seats, it's connecting people that, have built lifelong relationships afterwards.
That's a really big deal. And also, as a general comment, we can hit numbers for the results, but then there's an emotional component to what you're saying. By the way, an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Really, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, everybody, I have 1 minute with you. So I am actually going to stay on longer, and I'm going to ask, I'm not sure if he is open to it, but I'm going to ask if our third guest would be open to staying on, but we will see that. But what I want to end with you all on is to say you put it together with situation, action, result, interesting thing. And I want to give you a challenge actually for this week, which is last week I suggested, could you put a description in your about section? So I'm switching gears a little bit. Could you put a description in your LinkedIn section for for these kinds of companies? I get these results by doing this. So something like that. This week, I am inviting you to, how on LinkedIn it has your face and then it has a background. So a lot of people who weren't looking for jobs, they have that regular LinkedIn background. My invitation to you is to put up a beautiful photo there. I used to have just trees, bamboo trees. Some people have gears if they're in a physical mechanical field. So literally just an image behind you. I'm not even going into personalizing it or writing anything on that image, just literally put an image there because you come out as different. You don't come out as someone who hasn't touched their LinkedIn profile. So my mini challenge to you is put up an image, just upload an image. You edit your profile and you upload an image. One last word right at the top of the hour is we did not talk about the tell me about yourself question. So we will talk about it next week. They have some bullet points for you, but in short, you are very responsive to what the company needs when you do the tell me about yourself. I'm going to end with one last thing, which is for those of you who can stay the 30 seconds to write it down. What is your one takeaway? So please put it into the chat. What is your one takeaway from today? It can be something any of us said. It can be a thought you had. What is your one takeaway? So let us know right now. Oh, I love what you wrote here. Everyone has a sorry to tell. Everyone has a sorry to tell. Being concise is important. Each of them can be 2 sentences. That's great. Be prepared, rehearse your sorries. There's something so beautiful about that. Everyone has a sorry to tell. Effective results focused storytelling. You're authentic. You up-level the actions that you can take from tactical to strategic if you need to, if that helps you. Quantifying results is important. Make sorry like a conversation. You're spot on with that. But gosh, I'm taking away everybody has a sorry to tell. Everybody has a sorry to tell. I'm going to end the formal part and then I'm going to invite and see if we do one more example, but the formal part will end right here. We've just done the interviewing. Next week, we are back on, I actually do not remember the topic. I think it's resumes and LinkedIn profile for next week, but we will see you next week. Really great playing with you, Ahava and Carlos. Really, really appreciate it. And today we did SARI stories and how do you answer any of those large, broad questions. We're ending for now and you can stay if you want to. Ending now and thank you.